Chapter 16 The Hope Beyond Hope. Late in the afternoon of the third day, Philo came to the farms at the edge of the cultivated land south of Philadelphia. He had lain for part of the second day among oleander bushes below the desert road, thinking he was going to die of thirst, too stiff and weak to move. In the end, he almost crawled back to a place where he was more likely to find help. A kindly trader had stopped and given him water and a lift to Madaba. Lying on a pile of stinking hides in the back of the wagon, he had understood a little how Hylas had felt when he was taken the same way. The desert road was not one to travel alone. Philo was limping from a sore heel as he climbed the last slope to where the road wound into the protecting hills. But on this, the third day of the journey, he was stronger than he had been at the beginning. There had been time to think, for Macaris to grow less vivid in his mind, and his feet carried him further away. Then the last bend in the road brought him under the high western wall of the Citadel Hill to the desert gate as he was almost home. Was this how his father had felt, riding in on a mule with his business done and a welcome waiting him? Then Philo stopped and went on more slowly. He had been about to take the first turning over the hill. Now some instinct made him pause and think. He went instead to the marketplace. A group of boys he had been at school with were gossiping by a stall. He glanced his way, and his eyes traveled across Philo's face. One glanced his way, and his eyes traveled across Philo's face with the blankness of unrecognition. He realized how he must look. Philo went to the edge of the fountain and sat down on the rim. After he had drunk, he looked down at his face in the water and did not recognize it. He was filthy, of course, and burnt dark by the sun, his hair a rock-headed mop. His tunic was bleached and tattered where the thorny brush of the desert had torn it, and it was much too short. He must have grown a lot, and by the look of his legs was thinner. No wonder that in his own city he had not been recognized. He scooped up a double handful of water to wash his face. A voice said, "It'll take more than that to make you presentable." He looked up into the wrinkled, beaming face of old Gorion, who hugged him like an uncle, patted him, and held him at his arm's length for a proper look. "I was watching to be certain. You've changed, but you're more like your father now. So you are home from the wars?" "Yes, it's almost over for me anyway." Gorion, studying him, saw more than Philo realized. "You need a bath." The thought of one swam into Philo's mind like a dream of paradise. It had been so long since he had slept under a roof or in a bed or bathed with warm water. But in the state he was in, he had not the courage to go alone. Gorion saw that too. "Patience. There is a friend of yours not far away. I only left him to speak with you. He will go with you to keep you in countenance and scrub your back." He led Philo away from the center of the square and over to the arcade where one of Paulinus's shops had been. A man was standing in the shade of an archway, looking across at them. Philo checked in his stride as he recognized him, and then Hylas's hands were on his shoulders, and he had hidden his face in Hylas's tunic. "Gorion told me I needed a bath," said Philo, for lack of a better greeting. "I don't know how you feel, but I know how you smell." Hylas stopped at a stall to buy perfumed oil and then led the way. The public baths were not far off. At the door, Philo stood and looked back for Gorion, and then remembered that as a Jew he would not have come in. He turned to Hylas to ask the first of many questions that must come. "Later," said Hylas. "If I don't get you scrubbed at once, you'll be too tired." Philo dropped his clothes in a heap on the floor and went through to the hot room. Hylas oiled and washed him like the experienced slave he had once been, noticing the new height and slimness and the faint scars on his shoulders. It was only when Philo had cooled off and come back with wet hair and wrapped in a large towel to lie on a marble slab and relax that he began to talk. "Did Gorion tell you of any of the news?" "No, he didn't have time. Is Lucia—" "Steady!" Hylas pushed Philo back onto the slab. "You haven't been home yet?" "No, I nearly did, and then I came down to the market first." "Why?" I'm glad. It would probably have scared you to see the house shut up. No, let me tell you, you can ask questions when I've finished. Conan and I discussed what he should do after you went, but he didn't make any changes straight away. Then, 2 months ago, your uncle Menelaus died. He didn't leave you anything, but his married daughter has his house now, and she sent for Lucia to go and live with her. I think by then she was glad to go, and they're good to her. So it seemed better to shut up yours and save money till we saw who came home from the war and what they wanted. Philo sat up and started to pull on his tunic. Conan said she must live with us as long as one of us was left in Philadelphia, and of course we all went. I didn't realize. Then something else struck him. But Hylas, where are you living? With Gorion. Philo, you saw Conan? Yes, 3 days ago for the last time. He was well then. It was all black like a picture behind his eyes, the glare of the fires 3 nights before by the lower gate, the Jewish helmets high on the wall against the sky, the sound of the whip falling outside the citadel. It had to be talked about, but not now, not yet. I didn't see Nicanor. Conan did. Bassus gave them a safe conduct. I think he will have left the fort, but by now I don't know. I see. That will have to be enough for Lucia to know that he was seen. She will still hope on even when there is no hope, the way women do. Philo finished dressing then, as Hylas had expected. His tiredness came over him all at once, and he sat down again on the marble slab, not knowing what to do next. Come on, Gorion will be expecting us. You aren't really homeless in Philadelphia, you know, said Hylas, leading him out. That was exactly how Philo had been feeling. They walked together up the steep slope of the citadel hill to the little house that Gorion shared with a widowed sister, and there Philo was welcomed and taken in, and ate good food cooked at home for the first time for many months. They had given Hylas a little room up on the flat roof, where it was quiet and the light was good for his copying, and another mattress was carried up the stairs, so for the first time for several days Philo knew where he would sleep that night. After the meal they walked over the hill to the house that had belonged to Uncle Menelaus, to see Lucia. It was a warm dusk, with the swallows flying low and the last of the light still glowing in the sky, and as he walked, Philo began to see Philadelphia in the new light. Perhaps the day would come when he could reopen the house and live there, but for the moment it was no longer home. The memories that lay in wait in each room were too strong. No, Philadelphia was now somewhere he came home to, not where he lived. How old had his father been when he first took the desert road to learn his trade with an uncle who had gone that way before him? Hardly older than Philo. There was much to learn, and even a boy could earn his pay. He had been walking almost in a dream, and then he started when Hylas stopped him before the door of his uncle's house. Then there was the real homecoming. Lucia in happy tears, too stiff now to rise from her comfortable seat, but looking well as settled as one of the household gods in her new home. His cousin was a shy girl whose mother had died some years ago, and Lucia's advice with a troublesome baby was clearly proving well worth her keep. It was long after dark before Hylas took Philo back to their room on the rooftop. On the next day, Philo was up late, and it was mid-morning when he found Hylas sitting in the autumn sun outside Gorion's front door. Their eyes met, and they went out together without discussion and turned up the hill towards the citadel. A stranger's house was not the right place for what they had to talk about. Up in the small square outside the temple, nothing had changed. The leper was still there on the steps, and 2 of the older members of the city council were arguing outside the council chamber as if the last year had never happened. It was quiet and warm. Philo led the way to the place where steps went up to the small bastion on the city wall, facing south and west over the roads that led from Philadelphia. His refuge as a small boy, without conscious thought, his feet took him there again. Far below, a camel train was swaying out on the beginning of its journey, the beasts bubbling and complaining, and the camel boys crying shrilly. Hylas said, 2 months ago, when I could see what would happen here, I wrote to my friend. I thought I had been dead for long enough. To Camillus Rufus? Yes, but but it may be a long time yet before he gets my letter. I don't know where he is. It may have reached Rome, but I don't expect he's there. Strange to think that the whole width of the empire may be between us, yet when I see him, it will seem as if that distance has never been. Your God has spoken to you again, then? Yes, Philo, but not as drastically as before, but I think I have understood. My old life has gone as completely as if I had died in the desert, and this last year I have been learning everything again from the beginning like a small child. It was my problem that I learned slowly. I had to discover one can keep nothing back, make no bargains. For most of us, what we offer is returned, ours to use almost like a steward. We marry, love our children, and work much as we did before. Not all of us, though, and not me. I don't know what it is that lies ahead of me, but I know how to begin the journey. Philo had been hoping that he had not understood. The journey had not gone on without his friend's mind, had always been one where no one, however much they loved him, could follow, but now he knew that Hylas would leave them soon. The pain was as sharp as a wound. He looked down at the dusty stones of the wall, with their small lichens and the plants springing from between the crevices. He could not look Hylas in the face. When will you go? Not quite yet, but before the winter. I was waiting for you to come home, you see. Philo did not trust himself to comment on that. Where will you go? I think to Athens first. I have friends there who will advise me. Then to Rome. I can't see further. There was the eager energy in his voice that Philo remembered in his father before a journey. Briefly he grudged Hylas that, and then he remembered what Hylas had come through to reach it. The pain and helplessness and months of weakness and patience. It seemed to him that Hylas followed a hard god. I don't know what I'm going to do now, he said flatly. It's a lot easier to see what I'm not. You're not made to be a soldier, nor will you serve Rome. You could go north and talk to Timon, your father's friend. He would advise you. I suppose so. I like him, and I don't want to stay here in Philadelphia. Perhaps he'll have a better idea. He might even give me a job himself. I couldn't stay here. It would be too like things were before and yet different. But I can't choose what Conan and Nicanor did. I've seen what it's done to them. Tell me. Then Philo told him all that had happened, and the things that had hurt and almost destroyed him sounded small and ridiculous set against the death of a complete nation, the unbearable martyrdom of the Jews. When he came to the tormenting of Eleazar, Hylas held his hand, coaxing him on, knowing that it must be put into words and said aloud, or Philo would never be clear of it, like a physician cleaning a dirty wound. I don't know what would have been the right thing to do. Every decision that anyone made seemed to lead to terrible things happening. I don't think Eleazar and the Jews in Machaerus understood what it would be like, what it would come to in the end, when they took over the citadel. I suppose you can get drunk on more than wine, and men work each other up. The fighting was exciting, and there was not too much of it, and none of the soldiers I've talked to thinks they'll be wounded. They just think they may be killed, and then it'll be quick. And for Eleazar it wasn't. That I understand very well. Philo turned then for the first time and looked into his friend's steady dark eyes. Hylas's thought was turned inward. Philo asked, What should he have done, Eleazar? I suppose all he gained for himself was a different death. If Bassus had gone through with the crucifixion, the Jews in the citadel would still have died. Nothing anyone could have done would have changed that. Because Bassus won't really leave them to go free, he must be hunting them already across the Jordan Valley. But perhaps the people in the town wouldn't have been killed. It's a very hard indeed to die in great pain when you think that your death will have no effect at all. I know, I tried to. Before you reached that far, you seem to have been walking towards your death no more than a step at a time, not noticing where you were going, and then it's too late. You can't stop it, and there's no way out. You would have died if Father hadn't found you, and there wasn't anything you could have told those auxiliaries to stop them, but to be crucified, to see the cross set up, and to understand. My God was crucified. Did you know that? Then how could he be a god? You've talked as if he still speaks to you. How could he? What answer could there be to that? Was the very light that guided Hylas darkness too? To a god is death of a human body the end. He came through seemingly useless and hopeless suffering to, it's hard to know how to explain to you. Then, if Eliezer had died, right would have come from it, even though he couldn't see how then, and I still can't? Yes, I think that's what I mean. The Jews might have understood at last for themselves what they were fighting, and then they might have surrendered another way, and the people of the town would not have been killed. I see. It's not something you can know. You have to trust. Trust something. Your God, I suppose. You did, and now you're home. Or you're here. Whom can I trust? He isn't only my God, you know, said Hylas, smiling. He belongs to Gorion, and more people in Philadelphia than you expect, and my friends in Athens and Rome, and anyone who will turn to him. He is the God of all of us, even if we don't follow him. But you aren't going to be here to explain it all to me, said Philo helplessly. I'm not going yet, and some things needn't take very long. How long do you need to fall in love? Philo put his head back and laughed. I don't know, I never have, but is it something like that? How long had it been before he loved Hylas? Not many days. Very much. Better, actually. It lasts longer and doesn't shut other people out. They turned from the wall and climbed back down into the square. It was time to go back. I think before I go, I can leave you something enough, if you are really trying to find some purpose in the way of your life should go. You've come so far, Philo, from the boy who washed the dirt off me with gritted teeth all those months ago. Hylas put an arm around Philo's shoulders as they walked down the hill. It was a short walk, and yet, with the insight one is sometimes given to recognize things for what they are, Philo knew that he would remember it when many of the painful things of the last months that he had thought never to be free of had faded from his mind. He was clean again, and there was still a little time to draw breath and prepare himself for what lay ahead. Some god, perhaps the still unknown god of Hylas, was merciful. Chapter 17. Night in the Desert. It was spring, and the first caravan south after the late rains was 7 days out on the road beyond the desert gate, where the high plateau falls away to the great floor of the desert that stretched to the last mountains before Eilat and the Sea of Arabia. Philo was stiff and sore, still at odds with the camel he was riding, but not as stiff as he had been 5 days before. It began to be possible to believe that camel riding was a skill that could be learned, like riding any other beast. The caravan leader halted them above the long pass to tighten loads. It would be after dark when they reached the next well and made camp, but you could learn to sleep in the saddle if your mount was no more ill-intentioned than most camels, and the ground was dry so that it could keep its feet. Further back, the going had been bad where floods had washed out the road, and Philo had discovered that a fall, even from camel height, need not break bones. He had been more troubled by the blinding light that seemed to sear into the brain and the blown sand which scoured his face raw. That and the effect of bad water on an untrained stomach. But the view from the top of the pass was enough to make anyone forget the griping in his belly. Far below, where the plain ran level out into the evening haze, the colors were rose and amber, and there were dark purple shadows from the high outcrops that edged the horizon for as far as he could see, like the bones of some long-dead monster. Closer to, the isolated rocks, their sides cut clean across the strata so that they looked like high-walled castles, seemed to menace the road. The caravan leader, Timon's steward, was up ahead shouting and getting the beasts on the move again. Philo settled himself into the hard hollows of his saddle and pulled his cloak about him. It was still cold at this height. He felt Conan's letter crackle in the breast of his tunic, the first word that they had received since Machaerus. He had been glad that it had come on the day before Hylas went north. Conan was doing well. He was an officer now. He seemed relieved at the turn events had taken in Philadelphia. There was good advice to Philo. Then, in the last paragraph, he seemed suddenly to be speaking directly, to have lowered the curtain that now hid his real thoughts. You will have heard that the legate hunted the men of Machaerus until a few of them can have escaped. As he rode down into the shadows of the plain, he knew that Nicanor must be long dead. It was useless to hope, still as Lucia did, and Conan was trying to tell them that. Even if Nicanor had escaped from Bassus's men, where could he have gone? Masada, perhaps, and no one could doubt what the end would be there. Apollodorus had died 3 days' march away from where his son rode now down the desert road, and his second son had already followed him into the darkness beyond. Unless all that Hylas had taught Philo was true, and there was a light beyond anything he had ever dreamed of there, at the end. Hylas had been nearer death than any man he knew, and he had a right to speak. Philo tried to imagine the unknown tribune in Britain receiving, after many months, Hylas's travel-stained letter. Camillus must be very different from Marius Galenus. Hylas loved him, and to know that such a friend still lived after so long a silence must be a joy as deep as pain. And perhaps they would still meet across the whole breadth of the empire. Philo knew he would not see Hylas again himself, if it did not help to pretend otherwise. He had wept after the last dry-eyed farewell, feeling, if he had known it, as Conan did when he saw Nicanor for the last time. But what Hylas had been was still a part of him, something he could lose only if he no longer valued it. The desert road in Timon's service was his father's heritage, and had claimed him now. He did not know what lay ahead across the plains and mountains, but he was as ready to find out as he had always been. His camel stumbled and complained, and he prodded her with his foot in the way he had just been taught. A red eye of sun glowed above the dark western cliffs and then dipped into the darkness. The plain was like a dim pool below as the swaying line of laden camels wound down toward the water and the great silence of the night.